Today, democracy dominates headlines and political discourse, hailed as the pinnacle of human progress and freedom. But what if its story is far older, far more complex, stretching back to the very foundations of divine rule, and carrying a prophetic weight few dare to discuss? Before any human constitution, before the concept of kings or elected leaders, there existed a perfect model of governance, God's direct, benevolent rule in the Garden of Eden. Here, in a pristine, harmonious world, life unfolded under the Creator's immediate authority. There were no complex legal codes, no voting booths, no human-appointed magistrates. Instead, there was a singular, clear, divine command, a simple covenant of relationship, ensuring peace and perfect order. God's presence was the law, His wisdom the guide, and His love the foundation. It was a governance of unblemished truth, where every need was met and every path was clear, a direct theocracy in its purest, most uncorrupted form. Yet, this idyllic harmony would be shattered by a single, pivotal act of self-determination. Confronted with a choice, obedience to the divine command or the pursuit of personal knowledge, humanity chose its own will. This was the first vote, not for a leader, but against a divine law, a decision that severed the direct connection to God's perfect governance. With this act, sin entered the world, bringing with it chaos, discord, and a profound departure from the original divine order. The consequences were immediate, echoing through millennia, forever shaping every subsequent form of human government and our struggle for true, lasting leadership. After the profound rupture in Eden, humanity found itself adrift, navigating a fractured world without the immediate, direct hand of God's governance. What emerged were rudimentary forms of human leadership, primarily centered around family and tribe. Figures like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob rose as patriarchs, their authority rooted in lineage, wisdom, and a direct, though limited, connection to God's guidance. These were not democratic systems. There were no elections, no assemblies of the people to decide policy. Instead, the patriarch led, his word often law, his decisions guiding his household and kin through a harsh, uncertain world. This era reflected a desperate, yet necessary, attempt to impose order in a fallen world, a stark contrast to Eden's perfect design, and an early glimpse into humanity's inherent need for structure, even if imperfectly formed. Before nations, humanity united in a singular purpose, to build a tower to heaven, bypassing God. Was this the true birth of human-centric power? After the flood, as humanity began to multiply again on the plains of Shinar, a monumental ambition took root. Instead of spreading across the earth as commanded, they declared, "Let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad." This was not merely an architectural feat. It was a collective declaration of self-sufficiency, a unified human will seeking to ascend, to centralize power, and to define its own destiny apart from its creator. It was the genesis of a human government, a people's will defying the divine. But God saw this unified rebellion. He confused their languages and scattered them across the face of the earth, demonstrating the immediate, chaotic consequences of human unity when built upon defiance of divine order. God gave Israel a perfect system of government, a direct rule from heaven. Why, then, did they reject it, demanding a king like every other nation? Centuries after Babel, God chose a single nation, Israel, to be a beacon to the world, and for them, He unveiled a unique blueprint for governance, a theocracy. On the hallowed peaks of Mount Sinai, amidst thunder and fire, God Himself descended, giving Moses the 10 Commandments and a comprehensive set of laws. This was a government unlike any other, where God was the ultimate king, His divine statutes the supreme law of the land. There were no elected officials, no popular votes to dictate policy. Instead, God ruled through priests who mediated His will, and judges who administered His perfect justice. It was a system founded on direct divine revelation, intended to foster a direct relationship with the sovereign ruler. This was God's ideal for his people, a perfect government designed from heaven. Even with miracles, Israel yearned for human leadership. Was their journey through the wilderness a foreshadowing of humanity's eternal struggle with divine authority? Yet, even with God's direct presence, even with manna falling from heaven and water gushing from rocks, Israel's journey through the wilderness was marked by a persistent murmuring. Their complaints were not just about hunger or thirst. They were often directed at God's chosen leaders, Moses and Aaron, and by extension, at God himself. Time and again, they longed for the visible security of earthly leadership, for a tangible authority they could see and control, rather than the invisible, though undeniably powerful, guidance of the Almighty. This struggle, this constant yearning for human control even in the face of divine provision, became a recurring theme, a latent desire for self-governance that simmered beneath the surface of their theocratic experience. When every man did what was right in his own eyes, chaos reigned. Was this the ultimate argument for human leadership, or a stark warning about its limits? After entering the Promised Land, Israel entered the era of the Judges. This was a turbulent period, a stark demonstration of what happens when a people reject their divine king. The book of Judges repeatedly declares a chilling truth. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This absence of central, divinely appointed authority led not to liberty, but to moral decline, tribal conflicts, and cycles of oppression from surrounding nations. Though God continuously raised up deliverers, the judges themselves, the underlying societal chaos persisted, revealing a profound human longing for stable, visible leadership, even if it meant abandoning the perfect, invisible rule of God. The consequences of human self-will were clear, not freedom but fragmentation. The ultimate pivot. Israel demanded a king, not realizing they were rejecting the King of Kings. What lessons does this ancient choice hold for modern democracies? The climax of this struggle arrived in the days of the prophet Samuel. The elders of Israel, weary of the cycles of chaos and longing for the perceived stability of their pagan neighbors, approached Samuel with an audacious demand. "Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations." Samuel was deeply distressed, recognizing this as a profound rejection of God himself. But the Lord spoke to Samuel, saying, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king." God then instructed Samuel to warn them of the heavy price of such a choice. Human kings would tax them, conscript their sons, seize their lands, and oppress them. Yet, despite the dire warnings, the people insisted, sealing a pivotal moment in history, a nation explicitly choosing human rule over divine sovereignty. The longing for a visible, earthly authority finally reached its crescendo. After centuries of a theocratic system, where God himself was their unseen king, the people of Israel clamored for change. "Give us a king like all the other nations," they demanded of the prophet Samuel. Their rationale was clear. A human monarch would provide military strength against their enemies, a tangible symbol of national prestige, and a visible leader to rally around. They yearned for conformity, for the perceived stability and glory of the surrounding pagan kingdoms, forgetting the unique covenant that set them apart. Yet God, through Samuel, delivered a solemn warning. A human king would levy taxes, conscript their sons, seize their lands, and ultimately oppress them. It was a stark prophecy of the burdens that come when humanity chooses self-rule over divine guidance. They wanted a king, like all the other nations. Was this a desire for stability, or a profound misunderstanding of their unique identity as God's people? Despite the divine warning, the people persisted, and God granted their desire. From the tribe of Benjamin, a man named Saul, taller and more imposing than any other, was chosen. The people rejoiced, seeing in him the strong, visible leader they craved. His early campaigns brought victories and solidified his position, a testament to the initial hopes placed in human leadership. But the narrative quickly shifted. Saul's reign, born of popular demand, was soon marred by his own fatal flaws. Impatience led to presumptuous offerings, pride led to disobedience, and a growing paranoia consumed him, turning him against God's anointed. The king chosen by human standards rapidly proved the limits of such leadership, ultimately losing his kingdom and his life. The first king chosen by popular demand quickly proved the limits of human leadership. What fatal flaw in democracy does Saul's story expose? From Saul's tragic failure, God raised a different kind of leader, a shepherd boy named David, a man after his own heart. David's anointing marked a profound shift. A king chosen not by human stature or popular vote, but by divine selection. His reign brought unprecedented unity and expansion, establishing Jerusalem as a spiritual and political capital. David's commitment to God's laws and his reliance on divine guidance set a standard, creating a golden age for Israel. Yet even a king chosen by God could stumble. David, despite his devotion, was still human, subject to personal failures that would echo through his family and nation. Does David's reign prove that no human leader, no matter how righteous, can escape the shadows of fallibility? The pinnacle of Israel's human monarchy arrived with Solomon, David's son. Blessed with unparalleled wisdom and immense wealth, Solomon oversaw the construction of the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, a testament to God's presence among his people. His reign brought peace and prosperity, extending Israel's influence like never before. Yet, even this era of splendor was not immune to the perils of unchecked power. Solomon, in his later years, compromised his divine calling. His numerous foreign wives led him to idolatry, and his opulence led to oppressive taxation and forced labor, policies that directly contradicted God's law. This decline, born of compromise and the allure of power, sowed the seeds of discontent that would soon tear the kingdom apart. The wisest king the world had ever seen. Yet his reign ended in compromise and division. Is unchecked power, even in the best hands, always destined to fail? The grand, albeit flawed, unified kingdom forged under David and expanded by Solomon was destined not to last. For all of Solomon's wisdom, his later compromises with paganism and increasingly burdensome policies sowed seeds of discontent that would soon ripen into a bitter harvest. Upon his death, his son Rehoboam ascended the throne, but instead of heeding the counsel of the elders to lighten the people's load, he chose arrogance, declaring, "My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." This pronouncement, born of human pride and short-sightedness, shattered the fragile unity. 10 of the 12 tribes revolted, establishing the northern kingdom of Israel, while only Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, forming the southern kingdom of Judah. What began as a divinely established monarchy, intended to reflect God's rule, crumbled under the weight of human folly and self-will. The dream of a united kingdom shattered, proving that even a divinely established monarchy could crumble under human folly. What does this say about any human government? As human kings ascended and descended, often straying far from divine precepts, God did not abandon his people. He raised up a powerful counter-voice, the prophets. From the fiery pronouncements of Elijah on Mount Carmel, challenging the idolatry of King Ahab, to Elisha's miracles confirming divine power, and the profound, foretelling words of Isaiah and Jeremiah, these were God's direct messengers. They stood as formidable figures against corrupt human authority, denouncing injustice, idolatry, and the abuse of power. They were not elected officials. They were divinely appointed, speaking not the will of the people, but the unequivocal word of God. Their mission was clear, to call Israel and Judah back to their covenant with the ultimate king, to expose the spiritual decay that permeated human rule, and to warn of impending judgment should they persist in their rebellion. When human kings fail, God sends prophets to speak truth to power. Were these prophets the ultimate checks and balances against flawed human governance? Yet, the prophetic warnings often fell on deaf ears. The kings, driven by political ambition, personal desires, or a thirst for power, repeatedly led their people into widespread idolatry and grievous social injustice. Temples to Baal and Asherah rose across the land, eclipsing the worship of the one true God. The poor were oppressed, the innocent condemned, and the covenantal laws, meant to ensure righteousness and justice, were flagrantly disregarded. This was the inevitable outcome when human power replaced divine authority, when the will of the king, or the popular sentiment, superseded the will of God. The corruption of power became a cancer, spreading spiritual and moral decay throughout the nation. It was a stark demonstration. Human rule, unchecked by divine guidance, inevitably leads to chaos and a moral vacuum. When human power replaces divine authority, chaos and corruption follow. How do these ancient warnings about kings resonate with the flaws we see in modern governments? The consequences of this persistent rejection of divine rule were catastrophic and undeniable. The northern kingdom of Israel fell first, conquered by the Assyrians and scattered among the nations. Centuries later, Judah, despite its occasional righteous kings, also succumbed to the same cycle of apostasy and injustice. God's patience reached its limit. The Babylonian army, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, besieged Jerusalem. The city walls fell. The magnificent temple, once the dwelling place of God's glory, was plundered and burned to the ground. Thousands were carried away into slavery, exiled to a foreign land. This was not merely a military defeat, it was a profound divine judgment. 70 years of exile by the rivers of Babylon became the ultimate painful lesson for a people who had chosen human kings and their own will over the benevolent sovereignty of God. 70 years of exile. Was this the final painful lesson for a people who chose human kings over divine rule? And what does it mean for our own choices today? From the initial proud refusal of a perfect theocracy to the tragic division of the kingdom and the devastating exile, Israel's journey under human kingship offers indelible lessons. It reveals the recurring themes of human pride, the inherent capacity for corruption, and the spiritual decay that inevitably follows when governance is divorced from divine guidance. No matter how wise a king, how strong an army, or how prosperous an era, all human systems of rule, left to their own devices, will ultimately fall short. They are temporary, flawed, and often susceptible to the very weaknesses of the human heart. This historical narrative draws a clear, stark distinction between God's perfect, immutable governance and the inherently imperfect, transient nature of any human system. From Saul to exile, the message is clear. Human governance, left to its own devices, will always fall short. But what then is the alternative, and is it still relevant? A pagan king's dream, interpreted by a Hebrew captive, laid out the entire future of human governance, centuries before it happened. What did it reveal about democracy? As Israel languished in Babylonian exile, its captor, King Nebuchadnezzar, was deeply troubled by a disturbing vision. In the opulent halls of his palace, he saw a colossal statue, towering and terrifying, crafted from a bewildering array of metals. Its head was pure gold, its chest and arms silver, its belly and thighs bronze, its legs iron, and its feet a mixture of iron and clay. This was no mere nightmare. It was a divine revelation. None of Babylon's famed wise men could unravel its meaning, but God's prophet Daniel stood ready. With heaven's authority, Daniel revealed the dream precisely, and then proclaimed its earth-shattering interpretation. You, O king, are the head of gold. Babylon, the greatest empire of its time, was God's chosen starting point to unveil the entire timeline of human kingdoms, each succeeding the last, each a testament to man's ambition, yet all ultimately destined to fall. The Silver Kingdom, two arms bound as one, yet one stronger. How did this ancient empire foreshadow the complex alliances and power dynamics of modern governments? As Daniel continued, he declared that after Babylon, another kingdom would rise, inferior to the golden head, represented by the chest and arms of silver. This was the mighty Medo-Persian Empire, a dual monarchy, yet with Persia, the stronger arm, ultimately dominating Media. It was Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, who conquered Babylon, fulfilling this precise prophecy. This vast empire, stretching from India to Ethiopia, established a new paradigm of human rule. It was a testament to alliances and the ebb and flow of power dynamics, a system built on human decree and military might, foreshadowing the intricate, often unequal, partnerships we see in modern governance. A kingdom of bronze, swift as a leopard, conquered the known world. Did the rise of Greek thought, with its democratic ideals, set the stage for a rejection of divine rule centuries later? The prophetic statue continued its descent, revealing the belly and thighs of bronze. This was the Greek Empire, arising with unprecedented speed under Alexander the Great. His conquests swept across the known world, establishing a vast Hellenistic domain. But Greece offered more than military might. It was the birthplace of philosophy, reason, and nascent democratic ideals. Its thinkers dared to place man at the center, questioning divine authority and laying the intellectual groundwork for self-governance, a profound shift that would echo through millennia, shaping the very foundations of Western political thought. The Iron Empire, crushing all before it, endured for centuries. How did its systems of governance, both republican and imperial, lay the groundwork for what we now call democracy? The statue's legs of iron represented the Roman Empire, a power unmatched in its strength and brutality. Rome crushed all opposition, forging an empire through sheer military force and sophisticated legal systems. From its early republic, with elected officials and citizen participation, to its later imperial dominance, Rome experimented with forms of governance that, ironically, laid the distant groundwork for modern democratic structures. Yet this Iron Kingdom also fiercely opposed the nascent Christian faith, becoming a crucible for believers, a stark reminder that even the most advanced human systems of rule can stand in direct opposition to God's divine plan. 4 terrifying beasts rise from the sea, each representing a world empire. What do these ancient visions tell us about the true, often brutal, nature of human governance? While Nebuchadnezzar saw human empires as a glorious statue, Daniel received a far more chilling revelation. From the chaotic, turbulent waters of human history, 4 monstrous beasts emerged before him, each symbolizing the predatory nature of man's dominion. The first, a majestic lion with eagle's wings, represented Babylon. Then, a massive bear, raised up on one side, its jaws clutching 3 ribs, Medo-Persia devouring its conquests. Next, a swift leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, symbolizing Greece under Alexander, unparalleled in its speed and fragmentation. Finally, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying, with immense iron teeth, devouring and crushing all in its path, before growing 10 horns, the Roman Empire, a power so formidable it defied earthly comparison. These were not benign forms of governance. They were ruthless, driven by ambition, conquest, and the raw exercise of human power. A little horn rises, speaking against God, seeking to change times and laws. Could this ancient prophecy reveal the ultimate form of human governance in the end times? From the terrifying 4th beast, Daniel saw something even more ominous. Among its 10 horns, a little horn emerged, small at first, but with eyes like a man and a mouth that spoke boastful words against the Most High. This power would be distinct, yet rise from within the remnants of the Roman sphere. It would seek to persecute the saints and attempt to change times and divine laws, challenging the very fabric of God's established order. This little horn foreshadows a tyrannical, human-centered authority that not only rejects divine rule, but actively seeks to dismantle it, leveraging worldly power to redefine truth itself. It is a stark warning of a future governance where human will is utterly supreme and utterly defiant. Before the Ancient of Days, all human empires, all forms of governance, will stand trial. What will be the verdict for those who built their power on the will of man? But Daniel's vision did not end with the little horn's defiance. Suddenly, the scene shifted to a celestial courtroom, ablaze with light and glory. The Ancient of Days, God himself, took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, his hair like pure wool, and his throne was fiery flames with wheels of burning fire. Before him, books were opened, and judgment was rendered. This awe-inspiring vision emphasizes a profound truth. All human rule, Every empire, every system of governance, no matter how powerful or enduring, is ultimately accountable to God's eternal throne. There is an inevitable reckoning for those who defy Him, for those who build their power on human will alone, rejecting the divine authority that reigns supreme. A stone cut without human hands will smash every kingdom of man. Is this the ultimate answer to the question of who truly rules, and how close are we to its arrival? This vision of judgment connects directly back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream. For as the Ancient of Days rendered his verdict, Daniel saw the stone, cut without human hands, strike the feet of the great statue. It was not a gradual erosion, but a catastrophic impact that shattered the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold into dust. This stone represents God's eternal kingdom, a divine order that will never be destroyed. It will not merely replace human empires, it will utterly demolish them, then grow to fill the whole earth, establishing a new, perfect, and everlasting divine rule. Every empire falls. Every human government has an expiration date. But what if the next great kingdom isn't built by man, but established by God Himself? The consistent message from Daniel's prophetic visions is unmistakable. Human empires, no matter their form, monarchy, republic, or future global system, are transient. They rise, they rage, and they eventually fall, always giving way to the next, until the final, predetermined end. God has a sovereign, predetermined end for all human-centric systems of rule, for all governance built on the will of the people, rather than His divine will. These visions are not merely historical records. They are a profound glimpse into a future where God Himself steps in, sweeping away all human dominion to establish His own eternal kingdom. Centuries passed after the fall of Rome, and the world began to stir. Not on battlefields, but in the minds of men. The Renaissance, a rebirth of classical learning and human potential, shattered the medieval focus solely on the divine. Suddenly, man was at the center, capable of great art, science, and thought. Then came the Reformation, a seismic shift that challenged the absolute authority of the Church, empowering individuals to seek truth for themselves. These were not mere intellectual movements. They were revolutions of the Spirit, slowly eroding the concept of divine right, laying the groundwork for a radical new idea that authority could flow not from God, but from man. From challenging popes to celebrating human reason, these movements reshaped the world. But did they inadvertently pave the way for a system that would ultimately reject divine authority? Out of this ferment arose the Enlightenment, a dazzling era of reason and philosophical inquiry. Thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau dared to imagine a new foundation for government, one built not on the decree of kings or the will of God, but on a social contract. The legitimacy of rule, they argued, sprang from the consent of the governed. Power would no longer descend from heaven to an anointed monarch. It would ascend from the people who, by agreement, granted authority to their leaders. This was a direct, profound contrast to the biblical model, where God's authority is absolute and inherent, not granted by human consensus. Governments by the consent of the governed, a revolutionary idea. But is the will of the people always the will of God, or can it lead us astray? Nowhere did this new philosophy take deeper root than in the nascent American experiment. A new nation was forged, declaring unalienable rights endowed by a creator, yet establishing a government where power fundamentally resided with we the people. The United States became the embodiment of democratic ideals, a republic designed with checks and balances, a testament to human ingenuity in self-governance. Yet, woven into its very fabric was a profound tension, a stated acknowledgement of divine providence alongside a fiercely guarded secular governance where the ultimate authority was the populace. Can a democracy truly be under God when its power rests with the people? This ancient question now played out on a global stage. What began as an experiment in a few nations soon swept the globe. The 20th and 21st centuries witnessed the seemingly unstoppable spread of democratic systems. From the ashes of empires and the iron grip of dictatorships, democracy emerged as the dominant, almost unquestioned ideal. It was lauded as the pinnacle of human governance, the guarantor of liberty, the pathway to justice. The prevailing belief became that the will of the people was the highest form of political expression, the surest path to societal good. Democracy is hailed as the pinnacle of human governance. But is this global consensus a fulfillment of divine plan, or a collective step away from it? As we peer into the unfolding tapestry of end-time prophecies, a striking pattern emerges across our modern world. The relentless rise of globalism. National borders, once sacrosanct, are increasingly blurred by intricate webs of international organizations, economic treaties, and digital networks that span continents. From global climate accords to universal health initiatives, from unified economic zones to shared security pacts, nations are subtly yet steadily surrendering individual sovereignty. This growing interconnectedness, often championed as the path to peace and prosperity, quietly paves the way for a more unified, centralized system of authority. But as nations yield their autonomy to global bodies, are we witnessing the subtle consolidation of power that biblical prophecy foretold, preparing the stage for a singular global government? Into this interconnected world, prophecy reveals a figure of immense charisma and power, the Antichrist. This is not a brute force dictator, but a master of deception, a leader whose rise is marked by persuasive speech and seemingly miraculous solutions to global crises. He will be the ultimate problem solver, a beacon of hope in a world desperate for answers to its mounting challenges. But what if this ultimate dictator rises not through military conquest, but through the democratic will of a desperate people? What if the very systems designed to empower the masses become the instruments of their greatest deception, allowing a charismatic individual to be embraced as the popular choice, a false promise of peace and security, leveraging democratic processes for his ascent to unparalleled global power? The culmination of humanity's ancient quest for unity apart from God is a world united under one head. Prophecy envisions a global government and economy, a system where every aspect of life, from commerce to communication, from identity to allegiance, is integrated under a single, centralized authority. This is a world where currencies may merge, digital identification becomes universal, and surveillance is pervasive, all in the name of efficiency, security, and a manufactured peace. For centuries, humanity has sought global peace and unity. But could this noble aspiration, this very desire for a harmonious world, be twisted into the system that ushers in the final global deception, creating a unified, yet ultimately oppressive, dominion? The terrifying genius of end-time deception lies in its appeal to the will of the people. This ultimate tyranny will not arrive with overt iron fists, but rather cloaked in persuasive rhetoric, masterfully orchestrated through global media and advanced digital interfaces. Appeals to freedom, justice, and equality will be used to manipulate public opinion, skillfully guiding the masses toward accepting a system that is, in essence, their own enslavement. People will willingly embrace new protocols and surrender liberties, believing they are making a conscious choice for a better future, for collective good. In a world desperate for solutions, the ultimate deception might come wrapped in the language of democracy, appealing to the will of the people for their own willing surrender. Are we prepared to discern the truth when it stands in direct opposition to popular consensus? As these prophetic currents converge, the ultimate choice facing humanity becomes stark and unavoidable. It is a crossroads where every individual must decide, will their allegiance be to a human-centric global system born from the collective will of the people, yet ultimately fleeting and flawed? Or will they stand firm in steadfastness to God's ultimate authority, His unchanging will, even when it means opposing the prevailing global narrative? This is the central conflict brought to a head, the will of the people versus the will of God. As the world consolidates power, the ultimate question emerges: whose will do we truly follow? The voice of the people, or the voice of God Himself, who reigns supreme above all? When human rule reaches its darkest hour, bringing the world to the brink. The stage is set for an intervention unlike any other. What happens when God finally steps in? As the age of human dominion draws to its bitter close, the world plunges into a period of unprecedented global judgment and distress. The tribulation. Cataclysmic events unfold across the globe. Natural disasters of unimaginable scale, wars that engulf continents, and famines that decimate populations. Humanity's desperate attempts at self-governance, its pursuit of peace and justice through its own strength, prove utterly futile. Instead, chaos escalates, systems collapse, and the illusion of human control shatters into a million pieces. This is the ultimate failure of man's will, a tragic testament to the consequences of rejecting divine authority, demonstrating that no human system, no matter how well-intentioned, can withstand the forces of spiritual and physical rebellion it has sown. The ultimate leader doesn't campaign for office. He descends from heaven with all authority. How does Christ's return silence the debate over the will of the people? In the midst of this global despair, a light pierces the darkest sky. From the heavens, with an unmistakable glory and power, Jesus Christ returns. This is not a subtle, quiet arrival, but a majestic, cataclysmic entrance, fulfilling prophecies foretold for millennia. He comes not through popular vote or human election, but by divine right, as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, his authority unquestioned, his power absolute. Every eye will see him, every knee will bow. This glorious second coming is the definitive end of all human rule, the final answer to humanity's age-old quest for a perfect governor. The ultimate war isn't between nations, but against the King of Kings. What happens when all human power, all will of the people, tries to stand against divine might? The final, climactic confrontation unfolds on the battleground of Armageddon. Here, the gathered armies of the world, a coalition of human might and demonic influence, stand in defiant opposition to the returning Christ. But their rebellion is short-lived. With a word, with a glance, Christ unleashes divine power, crushing all forms of human and spiritual resistance. The battle is decisive, the victory absolute. Every vestige of human pride, every attempt at self-rule, is swept away in this cataclysmic defeat, marking the end of all rebellion against God's supreme authority. What if the greatest obstacle to true justice and peace isn't human nature, but a spiritual force? What happens when that force is finally removed? Following this decisive victory, the very orchestrator of deception and rebellion, Satan himself, is seized. An angel descends, binding the ancient serpent with great chains, casting him into the abyss for 1,000 years. This act signifies the removal of the primary spiritual influence that has fueled humanity's rejection of God and its pursuit of flawed self-governance since Eden. With the God of this world imprisoned, humanity will finally experience a period of unparalleled peace, truth, and righteousness under Christ's direct rule, free from the insidious whispers of evil. Imagine a world without war, injustice, or political corruption. This isn't a dream. It's a prophecy of Christ's 1,000-year reign. How will this change everything we know about governance? After the tribulation's chaos and the defeat of all earthly opposition, the King of Kings will establish his physical kingdom on earth. From Jerusalem, Christ will rule for 1,000 years, a period known as the millennial reign. This will be a government unlike any humanity has ever conceived or experienced. No more political gridlock, no more corruption, no more warring factions. Swords will be beaten into plowshares, and spears into pruning hooks. Justice will flow like a river, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. The knowledge of the Lord will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. Every decision, every decree will stem from perfect wisdom and absolute righteousness, directly from the throne of God Himself. It will be the ultimate realization of divine governance, a stark contrast to the flawed, temporary systems of man. Every decision, every allegiance, every vote will be weighed before the great white throne. Will your choice for human will or divine authority stand the test? Following the millennial reign, a final, solemn moment of reckoning awaits all humanity. The Apostle John in Revelation describes the great white throne judgment. And I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. And there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works, by the things which were written in the books. This is the ultimate account, where every human choice, every act of governance, every rejection or acceptance of God's authority will be laid bare. It is the final, definitive judgment of all who chose human self-rule over divine sovereignty. Beyond earthly kingdoms and flawed democracies lies a new creation, where God's presence is the only government needed. Is this our ultimate hope, and what must we do to enter it? But the story does not end with judgment. For those whose names are written in the book of life, an even greater reality awaits, the new heavens and new earth. John's vision continues. Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. In this eternal state, there will be no need for human institutions, no earthly governments, no sun or moon, for the glory of God will illuminate all. God himself will dwell with humanity, wiping every tear from their eyes. It is a realm of eternal righteousness, perfect harmony, and absolute peace, where the presence of the Almighty is the singular, all-encompassing governance. Every human government, even the most revered, will eventually pass away. But one kingdom will endure forever, a kingdom where the king's will is always perfect. Are you ready for it? The trajectory of human governance, from Eden's direct rule to the rise and fall of empires and the ascent of democracy, points to one undeniable truth. All human systems are temporary, inherently flawed, and ultimately destined to fail. God's kingdom, however, has no end. His rule is perfect, just, and loving, established not by the will of the people, but by his sovereign decree. This eternal governance is the ultimate answer to humanity's unending quest for order, justice, and peace. It is the destination where all shadows of human ambition and self will finally dissipate, replaced by the boundless light of divine authority. From Eden to Armageddon, the story of governance is clear. Now, I ask you, whose will do you believe is truly unfolding in the world today? Leave your thoughts below. Like and share, and click here to dive deeper into the unfolding prophecies. The grand narrative of Scripture reveals that democracy, while appearing as the pinnacle of human ideals, remains a temporary construct, subject to the inherent flaws of human nature. Its story is deeply woven into biblical prophecy, culminating in a global system that, without divine intervention, leads not to liberation, but to ultimate control. The choice before us, then, is profound. Will we align with the shifting, often deceptive, will of the people, or will we submit to the unchanging, perfect will of God, whose eternal kingdom is soon to be revealed? We are living in times when prophecies unfold quietly, and what once seemed ancient is now more alive than ever. Do you see signs of these prophecies in today's headlines? And if you're ready to dive even deeper, click right now on the video you see on your screen. Blessings.